Hello, I'm Regina with AG Designs, and today I'm going to show you how to make your rhinestone template for your embroidery file. So first, we'll just talk about some of the items that you'll need to actually complete this project. So one, you need to have your digitized file for your mama or whatever image it is that you want. You need to have an embroidery machine. And as far as making your rhinestone template, you need to have what's called flock, right? That's going to be used to make your template. So I have two different kinds of flock. I've purchased some off of Amazon, and then I also have what I use from Be Createful. Now, they're totally different textures. So the one that I purchased off of Amazon is a more thinner piece of flock. You can kind of see it's extremely thin, kind of flimsy, just like a little piece of material. I do like it because it does cut, I think, a little bit better because it's so thin, but it does not have the backing like it does if you order from the Rhinestone World or Be Createful. They have the backing, kind of like on your HTV material, because you could put all of this down onto your mat when you go to cut it. So therefore, your holes will come out a little bit better, right? Um, and when sticking to the mat, it does not tend to stick worse than it sticks with this one because there's no backing. So when you go to print, or excuse me, to cut your holes, if you use what I received from Amazon, you have to peel this off because you can't cut it with the plastic film. The plastic film is what you're going to use to put on top of your design when you go to heat press it. So you have to peel it off. So you'll end up putting this onto your mat. So it's no backing behind it, but it does cut very well. Now, sometimes it cuts a little too well. With this one, it actually, when I went to pull this off of my mat, and I think it could have been because of the mat that I used the blue one because I didn't want it as sticky, but I wanted it sticky, right, to hold it. I probably should have used the purple one, but when I went to pull it off, it did tear. So you can kind of see it tore, but I just put it back together, and I was able to use this for this outline. So just be very careful. If you do use a thinner piece, it can tear or rip as you're trying to remove it off of your mat. Now, had I used this one, it wouldn't have torn because it has the backing that's going to sit on the mat, which is the paper portion, right? So if you use this one, or like I say, the one from the Rhinestone World, they're the same kind. Rhinestone World had blue. Be Createful has the pink. Okay. Once you place this on your mat, run it through your machine. Of course, again, it's going to cut your holes. When you peel it off, it leaves the little holes behind. Now, this is what I meant earlier in the video, or not earlier. You will hear me talk about it when we go to create the file. When you want to cut your holes, you're going to select on your machine, for your cutting machine, whether it's the Cricut you're using or the Cameo, how deep you want to cut your holes, right? I do mine very deep because I want to make sure that my holes cut all the way around. I do a 2-pass, so it cuts it, and then it goes back and cuts it again. Because I've had in the past, when I'm using thicker flock or heavier, it does not seem to cut the holes on the first pass. And sometimes the second pass, it doesn't. So you may need to do a 3-pass. Just depends on the type of flock that you have. And I did put my setting for the Cameo. I used my Cameo this time instead of my Cricut when I made this template. But I used my setting as leatherette, right? In the Cameo, I didn't see where there was an option for flock or the type of flock that I have. So I said, well, let me just use leatherette because then I'll make sure that it does cut the holes. And I really like that setting. So again, I used leatherette, 2 pass, and the highest setting for the deep cut. And I think it was like 32, 33 on the machine to cut. Okay, so you'll need your flock, you'll need your mat, you'll need your rhinestones. So whatever color you want to use, these are hot fix glue rhinestones. So underneath the bottom, they have the glue that's going to adhere to your material when you go to heat press this. And you'll want to make sure you have some tweezers handy and then your brush so that you can brush your rhinestones in on your template. I use the tweezers because sometimes the rhinestones don't want to go into the hole the right way. They'll go in upside down. If your hole seems to cut a little too large because you had two holes that are running together, then they won't sit in there the right way. You're going to have to turn them out, right? So just have a pair of tweezers handy so that you can turn them over. And or if you have some stubborn holes where they just won't go in, you'll need to place those rhinestones right into the holes. So that's why you need to keep your tweezers handy. And that's all you're going to need, and a heat press or something to be able to press the rhinestones onto the material that you want to put it on. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to walk you through Hatch is what I use as far as my embroidery software on how to export the file out so that it is a cutting file, because that's what you need to do, make it a cutting file. And then we'll move from Hatch onto Silhouette Design Space. This is where you're going to create your rhinestone template, and you need to have the business edition to be able to create your rhinestone template. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get started. Okay, so you want to log into your embroidery software, and then you want to locate your file. And this is going to be your actual embroidery file. And the size that I'm going to locate and open is the 8 by 3.5. All right, I'm just going to zoom out just a little bit so I can see the entire mat here. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is group it, right? Because right now it's kind of individual, it's broken out. So I want to group the entire word or design. And I'm actually using Hatch 3. Okay, so now what I want to do is go ahead and export this out so that I can, as an SVG file, so that I can open it up in Silhouette Design Studio so that I can convert it. So I will go over here to File and then Export Cutting. Once it opens, I'm going to select the objects that says select, or excuse me, export current design, and my layout should be as digitized. If I select automatically distributed, what I find it when I open it up in Silhouette, it's all scrambled, right? So you have to put it together. So I'm going to select as digitized. I will leave it as an SVG because that's what we want. So if yours does not come stating SVG, please make sure that you select that. This is just the folder where it's going to store this to my cutting files. And then I'm going to name this as Mama Big 8 by 3. And I'm just going to select export. So now this has been exported to my cutting files folder. I can go out and look at it in the folder or go ahead over to Silhouette Design Studio and bring this in. So I will open up my Silhouette Design Studio, and now we're going to find the file and start working on it. So I am going to select or search for my Mama Big, and I know it's this one because it was around 2:56 p.m. And I'll just select OK. Okay, so it comes in like this. So the first thing that I do as well, I'm going to group it. And then I'll come up here to the toolbar here and I'm going to select group. Okay, so now I can actually um, move this around. And let me just get my page set up here. Okay, so I'm going to use a 12 by 12 mat. I just like to see everything on the screen what I'm working with. So I'm just going to change this to 12 by 12. All right, so I just want to move this so I can actually see it better. And you can zoom in, zoom out to make it larger, whatever you need. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I want to create an offset. And before I do that, I just want to make sure that my file size that I jotted down from my Hatch software is the exact same file size. So here I can see it is the 8.001 and the height is 3.559, which was what was in the actual file. Okay, so since I've clicked on this, I'm now going to go ahead and create my offset because I need to create an offset so that I can use that as my rhinestone template because I want to use this SVG portion of the file as my setting, right? To make sure that I have my rhinestone template, the height and width a little larger so that I can set this back in it to make sure that everything looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and click on offset, and I want an external offset, not an internal one. So I'm going to click on offset and apply, and I'll close this. And so now you can see the red outline is actually my offset. So I can separate it so you can see it a little bit better. Now, one thing to mention, when you're in the offset option and you're creating your offset, you do have your distance and stuff that you can manipulate over here to the right of the screen when you're in it. I prefer to manipulate it when I actually have it on top of my design. Just looking at it, it seems to be well proportioned, but you have to remember you're embroidering, and then you want to make sure that your file is a little bit larger so your rhinestones don't actually touch your embroidered file. So here is where, you can move it out a little bit, up or down, right? So just be very careful when you are actually playing with that because you want to make sure that this one remains as the 8.001. This is the one you want to manipulate, okay? So what I'm going to do is, since I've separated them, I'm going to make sure that this is grouped. And then I can keep playing with it as far as the size, right? So if I put this back in, I know that it's not going to fit very well. You can see it's off a little bit, right? Um, and what I mean by that, you can see like over in the A is kind of touching from where the embroidery file would be, that kind of thing. So just be very careful when you want to resize. So this is not the one that I want. And you have to be careful too when you're trying to click on the actual one that you want to resize. So I'm going to click on the outer one, and I'm just going to bring it back in just a little bit. And that's still the wrong one that I'm touching. I move it down a little bit first. Now let me just manipulate this a little bit. Then I'll bring this back in. Because what I'm trying to do is get my placement right, because I just want to make sure that from the side to side and top to bottom, that there is enough space, right? When the rhinestones will actually come in. And so to kind of help, let me just do this. Let me change the coloring so you can kind of see it a little bit better. I'll make this red, and then I'm going to make this one black. And so what I'm looking for is spacing and how the rhinestones are, once I go ahead to set the rhinestones, how they're going to fit around this image. Because I don't want them too close and I don't want it too far, right? So also another thing that I do, I make sure like the top portion, you can see the black space up in here on top of the letters. I like to make sure it's proportioned on the bottom as well, right? So that everything kind of looks like it's in sync. So the way this is, I think it will fit nicely. You can make it larger if you want for your design, but I just want to make sure that it fits just around. So it's not too far apart, but there is some space there. So, okay, I'm just going to push this to the side because we're going to work with this. Okay. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to click on it and we want to bring some rhinestones in. So I'm going to come over here to select rhinestones. You can also select it from panels and then go down here to rhinestones as well. So you have various options. So once this rhinestone panel opens, here are your options as to how you can fill your rhinestones. I just want this to be on the edge, right? Just like an outline. But you do have where it will fill everything in. So you have those two options as well. But we will work with the outline here. Okay, so I'm going to select the outline. My size is going to be 10SS. And down here, as far as spacing, you can space your rhinestones however you want. Now, with the rhinestones, I like to use 0.039 because it gives a good spacing. And you want to make sure that your rhinestones are not touching, the holes are not touching, because when you go to cut your template, if they're touching, your holes are going to be cut touching. So that just makes for bigger holes, and sometimes your rhinestones will not fall into place. Okay, so you just want to make sure that none of the holes are touching when you go to cut them. And I'll zoom in so we can actually see how the holes look. And then you can, come back in and adjust your spacing. However you see fit. But I like to use 0.039. I know some people like to use like 0.025 or 0.01519. To me, that's a little too close, but to each his own. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to zoom in just so I can see a little bit better. We'll go 75%. And then now you're going to start your cleanup as well, right? So what I do is I just kind of trace with my mouse to see how the lettering looks and where it becomes a little convoluted. Like in here, sometimes you'll have rhinestones that are on top of each other and you want to remove those. But so far, this M, that portion looks pretty good. Now, as you come into where it's starting to mix in with your A, you can kind of see like in this area, some rhinestones are on top of each other. So we're going to need to get rid of some. And then you can actually move things around. You may want this to have a pointy bottom, right? So then you can start moving your rhinestones to make it pointed versus rounded, and shape, that kind of thing. So first, while it's highlighted, I'm going to go back to the rhinestone panel and I want to release the rhinestones. This will allow you the ability to move them around and or delete them and add if you need to add some back. Okay, so I'll click off of it. Now I can start working to clean up this template. So in here, I know I have some doubles, right? And things are touching. So you will just click on, and hopefully you can kind of see the little box that has formed. You can click on it and then hit your delete button, and that deletes the rhinestone, right? So I typically come in here and I start deleting a lot of my duplicates or the ones where I see they're on top of each other. And then I go back and I start moving things around and or adding. So if you don't want to delete first because you know, oh, I may have to add some, you could just move them and put them aside. So therefore, when you're ready to start really lining things up, you have some already that you can just move around and place in versus having to duplicate and or copy, right? So down here, I can see another, and you may not be able to see it on my screen, but I can actually see where they are on top of each other. Okay, as we come down here, there are more down here too, right? And again, you just want to make sure that everything looks cohesive. And again, you don't want to have large holes where your rhinestones won't fall in. And so here I just clicked on it and started moving it with my mouse, okay, just to get it back in line. And up here, I'm going to kind of reorg my M. So I'm moving it over a little bit, but I don't want it to really touch, each other. So we're just going to go through here. And like I said, just keep cleaning up. Now, when you're cleaning up, if you feel like, hey, this is just too many, I don't want to add in any additionals. I just want to take out some so that it just does not look crazy. Then I'm going to delete those little extras that I did put aside. But I do want to kind of get this a little straight. So it gives my M a little more of an outline. Okay, so I'm going to delete these. And you can highlight several of them at a time and delete them. I find when I do that, just because of my eyesight, sometimes I tend to go overboard. So I like to delete them one by one. All right, so now I'm just going to look at my A and make sure that things look okay. And so far they do. In here, they're not bunching. And I'll do the exact same thing again with my M, right? So tracing this in, it looks pretty good all the way around till we get back to this A. And I know I have more duplicates. And then you can also see here, the M and the A are extremely close up here in this area. So I'm going to just start moving just a little bit. Now I could delete this one, kind of make it in unison a little bit to the prior one, right? The prior M. And I'll do that there. I'm just going back through and I'm deleting my duplicates again, or the ones that are, on top of, right? And it looks like it's two. Yep. And I need to go back over because I think there might be over here too. There are. Sometimes I have bad eyesight and I do wear glasses and sometimes I still can't see. Okay, so that one was only one. So I will undo that. I want that to go back up. Okay, so we'll just put that back. All right, so let me just finish cleaning up over here. I think that's just one. Not sure. Okay, no, that's two. So you should get the gist of it. And it's just, it's just a little tedious. It's not hard to do. It's just tedious. So, put on a good TV show or some music. So as you're doing it, it makes the time go by a little faster. Okay. And then going back around. Okay. So again, the object is for nothing to touch. And that's why you want to, always zoom in just so you can see what's going on, and to see if anything is touching. Okay, so to me, this looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do first is bring this back in and fill it in here just so I can kind of see how it will look once it is embroidered and to make sure that things align. So as you can see with my A's, so I can either bring this down just a tad bit, um, to see if that would be a little better so that the A's actually fit and not touch my embroidery design. But you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. Like here in the groove, you can see the A's, they have that extra um stone there. So I honestly don't want those extra stones there because I think it's going to touch the fabric, or excuse me, the embroidered item. So I'm going to delete one of these over here. Okay, then I can move these in a little bit more if I wanted to make sure it was kind of a closed A, right? Now for this one, I wanted to move this over here because I do want uh a little rhinestone inside the heart. And then we'll see how things are looking. So I'm just going to move this over just a tad bit as well so that it doesn't look so gappy. Okay, so now let's try this again. Okay, I'm just moving and placing it so I know when I go to actually create this template and fill in my rhinestones that nothing will touch. Okay. And so where I have this one, I can actually move that just a tad bit. Okay. So to me, this looks pretty good. And again, you can adjust your height, and make sure you do all that on your offset before you bring in your rhinestones. So get it just like you like it. Okay. So I'm going to move this back out. I am going to group this one more time. Okay. And then I need to come up to release the compound path. So let me, oops, sorry. Okay. I need to get to the, over here. I'm going to go to object and then I'm going to do release compound path. And that way it turns these stones really into a cut hole type template. Okay, so at this point, you're done. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and just delete that because all you really need at this point is your rhinestone template. This is your template. So from here, you can save it. If you want to use it and cut in Cricut, you can save it and you'll want to save this to your computer. Okay. So when you go to save as, you'll want to save this to your hard drive. That way you can pull this in for your Cricut to be able to cut. Also, another thing before you even get ready to, move over to your Cricut design space to try and cut anything, make sure again, you have grouped this, because I find where after I do the compound release, for some reason I can still go back in and maneuver and touch those rhinestones, but I want them to be set, right? So I go back in and I group it one more time. Um, but make sure you get your size. So as you have this set, your size actually says is 8.449 by 4.197. Write that down, because when you go to pull this into Cricut, sometimes when you go into Cricut Design Space, it will bring in a whole different size, and you make sure, you want to resize your template so that it cuts right. So always make sure you jot down your size. Okay, if you're going to use your Cameo to cut, you can just save this to your library. So once you go to do File, Save As, instead of saving it to your hard drive, you can save to your library. And that'll be your library within Silhouette Design Space. Okay, and then from there, once you save it and you're ready to print, I'm not connected to I'm in a different room, so I'm not connected to my actual Cameo. But here is where you come in to send it. This screen will populate once it can find your machine, and then you can select to send this to your actual Cameo. Of course, when you're in Cricut Design Space, once you pull up your file, you'll go to make it, and then you can find whichever Cricut machine you want to send it to cut, and then load your flock on it, make sure your settings are accurate, and then you can print. Well, not print, but cut. And I will tell you, when I'm cutting flock, it just depends on the type of flock you have, right? So I've showed you two types that I have. I have very thin, one a little heavier. But for both, I make sure that I cut deep, because I want to make sure that all the holes are completely cut. I do a 2-pass, so it cuts it twice, just so I don't have to go in and manipulate with the template when I'm trying to get it off the mat, and some of the holes are not cut. So now I got to try and get the X-Acto knife and go through and finish cutting. I don't like doing all that. So I like to make sure that I do a deep cut enough to where it's going to cut through. Now it might, put some indentations on your mat with the holes, because it just depends on how deep you're cutting. But I prefer to have that than to not cut my flock. Okay. So once you do that, then you're ready to move on to the next step and put your rhinestones into your template to get ready to heat press it after you have embroidered your design. So that will be the next step that we do. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and place this flock onto our mat. And this the mat that I'm using is the light grip. It's the blue one. So we're gonna see how it goes. I used the blue one before, and it tore my flock tore when I pulled it up. But I know how to be extra careful with it since it's so thin. So we'll see if this works. So I'm just gonna line it up onto the mat here. Get all the bubbles out. And it's so sticky. The mat is sticky. This is a newer mat too. I just want to make sure I don't have, bubbles and lines, so that everything cuts like it should with the circles, the holes. So that's the only reason I'm being extra careful with this one, because again, it does not have that paper backing. So with the paper backing, you could just lay it down. This one, I have to make sure that there are no bubbles. Okay. So this is what we have that we're going to work with. So let me get my laptop and we will connect this to the machine. Okay, so for the type of material, I'm going to change this. And again, I am going to make it, let's see if I do fabric. I'm going to select my leatherette again. Okay, I want to cut it. I can do auto cut or cut. Okay, and then I'm going to continue. I've loaded everything. Okay, and it's starting to cut. Okay, so again, I've loaded this to my Cameo so that it can cut. I do have the Cricut Maker and the Cricut Explorer Air 2, but I don't know, whenever I use my Cricut to cut my my templates like this for rhinestones, for some reason to me it just doesn't seem to cut thoroughly. So I like to use the Cameo because I don't know, maybe it's the blades, I don't know what it is, but it just seems to cut a little better. So we're gonna go ahead and let this cut. I won't record the whole session of this cutting, but once it's finished, then we'll pull it off and see how it looks. And then we will put our rhinestones in, and then you should be able to get ready to heat press your design. Okay, so here is my mistake. When I put my flock on the mat, I didn't pay attention to where the design was placed on the mat, on the silhouette, right? So I started my flock at the very top, and normally I put a full sheet, but I was like, well, okay, I could just put the half sheet here. It won't matter. Well, because I didn't position it correctly, as you can see down here, actually I should have brought it down a little further, and it attempted to make the holes for part of the word, you know, on the mat. So this isn't a good cut. I do still have my original one though, right? But just to show you, and pulling away, let's start here so I can get into the corner of this. And pulling away, when you actually do this, you want to make sure that, again, your blade cuts through very well to cut all your holes. As you can see, the holes here is pulling away. So it cut really, really well when I use my Cameo. So you can see, you know, the holes from the actual template. But again, the template was not positioned right. So I'll end up tossing this. I'll clean this off of the mat, you know, the holes off of the mat. So I'll just use my scraper to get those off. But otherwise, it would have been a good mat had I just moved this down some to cover the full image. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you how to use your template to place your rhinestones in it. And one other thing that you'll need with your supplies, excuse me, is your rhinestone hotfix tape. It's like plastic on the outside. Underneath the plastic is very sticky. And then the coating here, you can kind of hear it, right? So you'll need that because you'll need to be able to place it the plastic piece on top of your rhinestones to capture them so that you can then lay it down onto your shirt when you want to heat press it. So when you do that and when you use this, don't throw it away. Like your pieces that you cut and use, you can reuse until the stickiness is just no longer there. So I have a bunch of pieces of this from when I've made t-shirts and things like that that are rhinestones. So I use these first before I go and cut a new piece. And as you can see, it's still sticky, right? And I've used this several times. So do not discard this until it's no longer able to use. So what we're going to do, I'm going to use my old template, the one that gave me trouble the first time because it did tear, but I have it positioned to where it can fill in, okay? So all you would do is get your rhinestones, and you have two different kinds of what do they call these? Brushes, right? Rhinestone brushes. The wide one, you can do it quicker and easier. And then you have your small one. So I'm going to try and use the wide one with this. And it's always best to try and do circular motions because that kind of pushes them into the holes a little quicker. So I'm just going to go ahead and spread out some of these rhinestones on here. And then I'm just going to use the mat, or not the mat, the brush, the wide brush. And I'm just going to come in and start in a circular motion to get these in. And like I said, sometimes it goes very quick when you use the bigger brush because it's a better landscape of, of pushing them in, right? Versus the smaller brush. And because I've had so many issues with this template on how it was cut, how the holes are, a lot of my rhinestones have turned upside down. So I'm just going to try and go in a circular motion to kind of turn them around and see if that will help too. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Because sometimes when the rhinestones turn over and the adhesive part is sticking up, the actual good part, the rhinestone, is attached to the adhesive on your file. Okay, so all right. Oops. And I'm using this makeshift desk. It's a little cabinet I have here in my sewing room because I'm in the process of having my industrial sewing machine put in here. And so I had to take down my old desk to do the industrial sewing machine desk. So I just don't have the table in here. So I'm just trying to make do with this space. But anyways, here is what I've done so far. And I don't want to tilt it too much because I don't want some of the rhinestones to fall out. But you can kind of see in some places where they turned over. So what I do, I take my tweezers and where it's upside down, I take it out and then I place it the right way. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is go ahead, because I have quite a few spots to fill in and to turn around. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and do this off camera to get it ready. Then I'll come back and show you how I pick it up on the rhinestone paper, and then you'll be ready to press it. Okay, so I have all of my rhinestones in the template, and now I'm going to pick them up with the hot fix tape. So it's very sticky still. What I like to do is bend it in the center like this, and then just lay it down and out. And then I go over it, I press down, so I follow the outline of the actual design, and I press down so that the rhinestones can adhere to the tape. Now, I know I'm going to have to fix some underneath this tape because of this one template that tore, right? Because it's made some of the holes kind of larger because of the tear, and so the rhinestones may not pick up as easily. So once you have your tape down, you know, I like to go pretty slow lifting it because I'm checking to make sure that they all pick up out of the actual template. When they don't, and you can kind of see in here, I have two right here. So I lay it back down and then I just push my nail over the ones that didn't pick up in hopes that they will pick up. If they don't, then at the end, I just turn my template over and I hand place them in. And like here, I had one that turned over. Again, since I've been trying to take this out, I'm just going to push them to the side. So I'll see where there's missing pieces. And you can see it on your template. And I'll just show you how I go in and add to it. And I have a couple more there. So I'm not going to try to go back through the template here because I know it's due to the holes being a little torn. Okay, so this is what it's looking like on the template. And like I said, I have a couple of pieces that are still left in. So what I'll do is I just turn it over and I kind of use the template as a model to know which ones I have to go in and fill. So to the eye, you can kind of see where you have gaps, right? So I'm doing it backwards from the A. I know I have one that I need to put in. So I'll just pick this one up since it's already upside down. And then I just place it in line. And be careful, you know, so that you kind of get it placed in there the right way. And then I just push down on it. Okay, if I move to the M, I know I got some problems at the top here and I can actually see it. So I'll just take another one of these. I'm going to turn it upside down and place it. But as long as your holes are cut individually, and that's why I like to space mine out on the template. I don't want them close together so that they, you know, merge in together when they're cutting the holes, because then your rhinestones will not lay like they should when you're trying to get them in the template. And then you have this extra work of coming in and cleaning it up afterwards. We all don't want the extra work, right? This should be seamless for you. Okay, so then I have one up here that has turned upside down and it moved. So I'm going to just put it back in the spot up here in this corner. I can see that's where it's missing. And then again, I just push down to make sure that they are on the sticky tape. Okay, so inside the A seems to be good. Okay, then I go back around over here. In part of this M, I can see where I have some gaps. So, you know, it can become a little tedious if you don't have a stable template. And that's why I wanted to cut a new template so that I could throw this one away, only because it tore. So I will eventually make another template. I'll just put a new sheet, a complete sheet on the mat. Okay, so I know I have a couple that I still need to fill in, but what I want to do is kind of do a gauge. So I'm going to turn this back around just so I can see what it looks like visually. Okay, so I know I still need to put one there. one up here between the M and the A, one over here for the M curve, and then that last A looks good. Okay. So let's put and see they're sliding up under because again the template tore, so the holes are wider and they're just moving all around in there. Okay, here I need one there. Oh, and then one right in there. And then we'll flip it back over and it should be complete. And then you'll be ready to, fix it on top of your item, your shirt or the sweatshirt or whatever you have that you've embroidered on. I don't have another embroidered item yet. But okay, so here is my template. So then all I would do at this point is I would lay my shirt on the machine, right? My heat press machine of what I'm going to press. And then I'll just put this template on top of it, affixing it in the right space around the embroidered word. So because we made the template larger, you should be able to just take this, lay it over your image that has been embroidered, get it in place, and then you'll heat press it. Now, I know with rhinestones, I think they say to heat press it like 15, 20 seconds, something like that. I like to make sure that they're truly adhered. I do it for a minute. So I do it for a minute with the contact sheet on top. Then I'll peel it off slowly, make sure that nothing has come up that's still attached to the sheet here. And then I lay my cover sheet down again and I heat press it one more time. That's just more stability for me and knowing that it is actually on there, right? So when they go to wash it, the stones won't come off. So some may think that I tend to overdo it, but I just like to make sure that everything is adhered properly. So with that being said, that will conclude this template as to how you can convert your rhinestone template, or excuse me, your embroidery file into a rhinestone template. So hopefully this was informative for you and you learned something new. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to, post them and then I'll answer to the best of my ability. By no way am I an expert in this. I just do enough to get done what I want to have done. And again, here is your outline of the word mama. Okay, so thank you for watching, and if you have not subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and do so, as I do a host of different types of items and craft items, I should say, from sewing handbags to embroidery. I work with epoxy, tumblers, t-shirts, all types of stuff. So I would appreciate if you would subscribe. And again, thank you for watching, and post your work so I can see that you actually was able to make this work. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.